Good evening, I'm David Brown, and this is the Northern Sun Experience. For the first time in conference history, the NSIC sent 3 teams to the Division II football playoffs, and we're going to start with Sioux Falls. The Cougs missed out on last year's postseason despite a 10-1 record. But this year, a 9-2 mark was good enough to notch the number 6 seed in Super Region 3. And after some lengthy airport delays due to the snow in Sioux Falls, the Cougars finally made it to Arkadelphia, Arkansas to take on the 3-seed Henderson State, and defense ruled early on. Wesley Johnson gets the sack for USF, but then Henderson State comes right back as Luke Papillion is picked off by Gary Vines. And the Reddies offense would have just enough in the end. Joseph Snap catches the 38-yard bomb inside the 5, and then Dallas Hardison rushes it in. Points were hard to come by, and USF just didn't have enough as they fall 23-16 to Henderson State. So USF couldn't advance. How would their Sioux Falls counterpart Augustana do at Humboldt State? Well, they were doing well early, up 7-0, but then Robert Weber rolls out and finds Chase Cravashi for the 21-yard score to tie things up at 7. Augie would capitalize on a special teams miscue, however. The high snap goes over the punter's head. Nate Winter recovers in the end zone. We're tied at 17 at halftime. But the Lumberjacks would take control in the second half. Weber to Marquise Deadweiler down the left side, 37-yard score makes it 24-17. And then Weber finds Cravashi once again. Augie's playoff run ends early with a 45-31 loss to Humboldt State. So neither of the lower-seeded NSIC teams advance. How would the 2-seed Minnesota State fare against Emporia State? Early on, not so well. Nick Piericini fumbles and J.P. Lorenz is Johnny on the spot. 46-yard fumble return just 32 seconds into the game. But just 3 minutes later, the Mavs show they can score on defense too. Rumeal Harris picks off the pass, goes 45 yards to the house. 7-7 tie on a couple of defensive touchdowns. Midway through the second quarter, the offense starts to show up. This 7-yard Chad Zastro touchdown gives Minnesota State a 28-10 lead. But the Hornets would continue to bring a pesky buzz. Kavosky Irvin scores 2 touchdowns late in the second quarter, including this 48-yard strike, zigging and zagging his way to the end zone. Mavs still lead at halftime, but the Hornets regain control. Antonio Brown scores from 13 yards on the shovel pass. Emporia State scores 35 unanswered to take a 45-28 lead. But Minnesota State would continue to fight back in this shootout. Zastro gets his 3rd touchdown from 24 yards. Mavs lead 49-48 in the waning seconds, but Emporia State has a chance to win it with a 33-yard field goal, and Austin Morton nails it at the buzzer. Emporia State shocks Minnesota State in a wild one, 51-49, so all 3 NSIC teams fall in the first round of the playoffs. When we come back, highlights from the NSIC Conference Volleyball Tournament, where there were technically some upsets, but a familiar champion.
The Northern Sun Experience on Midco Sports Network is presented by Sanford Orthopedics and Sports Medicine and Dakota Land Honda.
Welcome back to the Northern Sun Experience. With 7 teams ranked in the top 25 nationally, including 5 in the top 9, the NSIC's 8-team conference volleyball tournament is easily the most cutthroat competition in the country. The stakes are the highest they've ever been, and even a team in the lower half of the conference bracket is no cakewalk. That was the case Wednesday as the 8-seed Minnesota State visited number 1 Concordia St. Paul. Krista Hassing with a nice touch. And then it's Lexi Platts with the kill. Mavs took a 2-1 lead, but the Golden Bears would survive a huge test. Emma Lang with a cross-court kill, and then it's Riley Hansen and Anna Piaski teaming up for the big block. Concordia escaped by the slimmest of margins, 15-13 in set 5, and takes the match 3-2. Concordia escapes, awaiting the winner between number 5 Minnesota Duluth and number 4 Wayne State. Wildcats with some nice play at the net early on. Elizabeth Gebhardt and Alex Opperman team up for the block. But the road team would prevail in this one. First, Sydney Mott's kill is too hot to handle, and Mariah Sharp follows that with a similar smackdown. UMD tops Wayne State 3-1. On the other side of the bracket, number 7 Augustana took on number 2 Southwest Minnesota State. The Mustangs' Kenzie Beekman with the big block at the net early, but Augustana would hang tough. Kelsey Kaufman with the hammer. The Vikings would take the first 2 sets and be primed for an upset, but the Mustangs would battle back and take it. Sarah Parker goes cross-court for the kill. SMSU needs 5 to escape with a 3-2 win over Augustana. The last quarterfinal pit number 6 Winona State against number 3 Northern State. Wolves looked good early on. The lefty Kelsey Chambers goes cross court for the hammer, but Winona State was more than ready for the challenge. Taylor Gore's shot can't be corralled. Warriors take the first 2 sets, and they would finish in impressive fashion. Maria Raggi throws it down, and in the biggest upset, Winona State sweeps Northern State in Aberdeen. Winona's win set up a semifinal matchup between the Warriors and Mustangs. McKenna Larson goes up and nails the kill right into your living room. Mustangs with a little trickery later on in the match. Megan Larson with the no-look hit over the net, but it was no match for the Warriors. Taylor Gore goes cross court, and Winona State notches another upset, topping SMSU 3-2. They would take on the winner between Minnesota Duluth and Concordia in the championship. Anna Piaski continues right where she left off in the quarterfinals, throwing it down early. Later on, Heather Schiller remains on point for the Golden Bears, smacking down the Duluth comeback. UMD would prove to be a tough foe once again for the Golden Bears, however. Mariah Sharp with the kill down the line, but in the end, Concordia would once again sneak by. Emma Lang's shot ricochets off the Bulldogs. Concordia St. Paul needs 5 sets to move on over UMD. So that sets up the conference championship. Number 6 Winona State, number 1 Concordia St. Paul. Maria Raggi very determined to make it 3 straight upsets for the Warriors with the hammer down there, but the persistence of Concordia would prove to be the difference maker. Riley Hansen sticks with it and closes out set 2, 25-20. And then it's Emma Lang setting up Anna Piaski for the kill. Concordia St. Paul wins the 2015 conference tournament with a 3-1 victory over Winona State. So here's a look at the Central Region Tournament. A total of 3 NSIC teams make it to the Big Dance. By virtue of winning the conference title and being the number 1 team in the country heading into the weekend, Concordia St. Paul gets the number 1 seed and will host the Central Region Tournament starting on Thursday, December 3rd. They'll face the 8 seed Southwestern Oklahoma State. The winner of that match will face the winner between number 4 Central Oklahoma and number 5 Nebraska Kearney. As for other NSIC teams, Southwest Minnesota State earns the number 3 seed in the region, where they will face the 6 seed Washburn. And finally, Wayne State gets the number 7 seed. They'll face the 2nd seed in Central Missouri. And we're joined right now on the phone by Concordia St. Paul volleyball head coach Brady Starkey. Coach, very simple question. How does it feel to win the conference tournament and host the Central Region?
We're pretty fired up. We haven't won that conference tournament in many years, so I know the girls were fired up and excited about it. I think they're even just as excited. I think that we got the number one seed and get the host coming up here in a couple of weeks. So, yeah, we're all pretty fired up about it.
Now, last year was the first season in the last 8 where you did not win the national championship. So do you feel like your team has sort of regained that championship edge this year?
You know, I think that towards the end of the year here, we've kind of started to be where I kind of thought we would be, I think. But you know, initially, I think starting out, we definitely had a slower start than I expected, considering we had everybody back and we had a really solid spring. So, but really kind of excited where we're at right now, and hopefully we just keep getting better from here on out.
And finally, Brady, as I mentioned before last season, you had won 7 straight national championships. It's no secret you know exactly what to do in order to reach the top. So how are you approaching your girls for this upcoming postseason?
It's really kind of no different than we approach every postseason. I think that you know, just get out there, keep working hard, and then keep trying to improve every day. You know, I think that's kind of the unique thing about our team right now, is that we haven't exactly been peaking, and so hopefully we can kind of continue to get better here as the season goes. So at least that's what we're hoping for.
That again was Concordia St. Paul head coach Brady Starkey. Congrats to the Golden Bears. When we come back, 3 NSIC teams made it to the NCAA Central Region Volleyball Tournament, but fans of 2 schools in particular are confused why their teams did not make it. We attempt to sort things out next.
The Northern Sun Experience on Midco Sports Network is presented by Sanford Orthopedics and Sports Medicine and Dakota Land Honda.
Welcome back to the Northern Sun Experience. Concordia St. Paul, Southwest Minnesota State, and Wayne State are all in the NCAA Division II volleyball tournament. But fans and honestly some coaches and players are confused why 2 NSIC schools did not get in. Northern State and Minnesota Duluth each had impressive resumes after the conference tournament. The Bulldogs were ranked number 1 in the AVCA coaches poll for 4 straight weeks in late September and early October. Meanwhile, the Wolves started the season 21-0 and got as high as number 2 in the coaches poll, holding that position for a couple of weeks. So the question becomes, why didn't these two schools make the NCAA tournament, and what can potentially be done in the future to ensure they do make it? We tried to find the answer. The NCAA Division II volleyball tournament consists of 64 teams from across the country. Minnesota Duluth is 23-8 on the season. Northern State is 25-4. Yet neither team is among the 64 in the field.
I think there's a lot of people in Aberdeen and all over that are just going, yeah, we don't get it. I wish there was a manual that could explain how to talk to your team who's ranked 5th in the nation, who just got told they're not getting to advance into the NCAA tournament, because I would certainly read that book, and I use that advice.
Minnesota Duluth head coach Jim Booz is referring to his team's current 5th place status in the American Volleyball Coaches Association poll. Northern State is 6th in the most recent rankings, but those numbers are not something the NCAA considers.
We don't use coaches polls across the board for any of our 3 divisions. Coaches polls are not utilized for selections to NCAA championships. That's deemed a little too subjective. We use, hard statistics and records and things such as that.
Marie Scavron is the NCAA's championship manager specifically for Division II volleyball. The annual tournament is split into 8 different regions that represent different pockets of the country. Each of those 8 regions gets 8 spots, making up the 64-team field. Within each of those regions is 3 different conferences. All those conferences get an automatic qualifier, while the other 5 teams within the region are at-large bids.
The philosophy is that, the membership, which are all of the Division II member institutions who make the rules, determined that, the scheduling for Division II, we're scheduling the majority of the athletics competition with other members of Division II, and usually within the region, to try to minimize the missed class time, and also for some, reduced regular season travel budget.
The NSIC is part of the Central region, which also consists of the MIAA and the GAC. Those 3 conferences ended up fighting for the final 5 spots in the region after the automatic qualifiers. The NCAA uses a statistical formula that ranks a team's strength of schedule as well as its win-loss record in order to determine which 5 teams are most worthy of those at-large bids. And with those calculations, Northern State and Minnesota Duluth missed the cut.
Trying to explain some of this to 19 through 21, 22-year-old kids is kind of interesting.
In order to provide more transparency, the NCAA has its formula calculations readily available for the public on its website. And while coaches from both Northern State and Minnesota Duluth acknowledge that the regionalization model is applied correctly, they also feel it leaves out some of the top teams because each pocket of the country must have equal representation in the tournament, even if the caliber of the teams isn't the same across each region.
I don't necessarily have an answer for how you fix the problem, but I think at least we now have step 1 in identifying that this is a problem and it could continue to be a problem, and maybe there's something that we just need to start talking about. How do we correct it, or how do we adjust things in the future?
But the NCAA says the reason the Division II model exists is because of the inherent knowledge that D2 schools don't have the same resources as D1 schools, especially when it comes to traveling and budgets.
Each region sends its champion to the national championship. It does not necessarily mean that that will be the top 8 teams in the country that will advance to the national championship. And that's a little different concept. But that is what the Division II membership has decided is best for Division II.
So could a different model work? Marie Scavron says any consideration for a different system won't happen overnight.
If there would be any conversation about a change in that, that would be a multi-year process based on the Division II governance structure. It's not necessarily something that could be proposed in July and voted on in August.
I don't have the perfect answer, but it isn't me sitting on my couch right now at home. I think we were good enough to go, and I think there's some teams that are 18-11, 19-11 from other conferences that are going. I ain't gonna lie, it's a punch in the gut.
Well, either way, a congratulations to both Northern State and Minnesota Duluth on outstanding seasons. Now, to take a look at how the NCAA calculates its regional rankings, you can go to the website listed below. Once you're there, you'll find PDFs on the bottom of the page for each region that breaks down team by team the statistics used to determine its standing. Well, coming up next, several NSIC cross-country athletes had a chance at a national championship. Those results are next.
The Northern Sun Experience on Midco Sports Network is presented by Sanford Orthopedics and Sports Medicine and Dakota Land Honda.
Welcome back. The Minnesota State soccer team had the ultimate chance for revenge last week. The Mavericks were facing Central Missouri in the Sweet 16 of the NCAA tournament, the same team that bounced them out last season when they were an undefeated 22-0. Mavs hoping this year would be different, taking on the Jennies in Warrensburg, Missouri, but unfortunately they would fall late. Bailey Edwards would score in the 88th minute for the Jennies to provide a 1-0 victory. Despite another heartbreaker, congrats on a great season for the Mavs. From one grass surface to another, the NCAA cross-country championships were held Saturday in Joplin, Missouri. Here are some of the highlights from the NSIC on the men's side. 2 teams finished in the top 25. Augustana is 7th and Minnesota State Moorhead is 21st. The highest individual competitor was Augustana's Glenn Ellingson, who came in 11th place with a time of just under 30 minutes and 4 seconds. But the real drama was on the women's side. Down the final stretch, the University of Mary's Alexis Zeiss ekes out a win over Kendra Foley of Grand Valley State. How close was it? Zeiss beat her by 0.3 of a second. Unbelievable finish. And the Marauder sophomore is your women's cross-country national champion. A huge accomplishment. Congrats to everyone involved with you, Mary. As far as team results, the Marauders finished 12th. Augustana finished 13th. Minnesota Duluth was the highest placing NSIC team as they landed 7th place. As far as individuals besides Zeiss, Northern State's Sasha Hoven came in 13th place, and Augustana's Leah Seibert finishes in 17th place. Well, speaking of Augie, when we come back, we go under the Northern Sun at Augustana University.
The Northern Sun Experience on Midco Sports Network is presented by Sanford Orthopedics and Sports Medicine and Dakota Land Honda.
Welcome back to the Northern Sun Experience. We end our show this evening by shining the spotlight on one of our member schools with a feature we like to call Under the Northern Sun. Tonight, it's Augustana University in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, where student athletes say the experience prepares them for the real world.
Here at Augustana, I felt the things that we do differently than other programs we compete against or other programs in the nation is we have a great faculty and staff who are at every game, who are there cheering loudly for us, and it's a great advantage to know that my professors and people I meet on the street who are big Augie boosters are always at our games and always encouraging us every chance they get.
And then whenever we travel, I mean, our away sidelines, our away stands is almost just as big as the home stands.
One of the best things I think Augustana has to offer is just kind of the community feel of it. It's really small. You see everyone on the campus just walking around, especially the teammates. I mean, we're with each other all the time. Professors know you by name. You're not just a number here.
We don't focus so much on like our accomplishments all the time, but building strong relationships. So you really have a family here, and it's just awesome to be a part of it.
I think at Augustana we were given a lot of things into our own hands and challenged us, because in the real world we're not going to have people babying us, so you have to make your own decisions, and I feel like here we got that opportunity.
Being at Augustana, I have learned to juggle things more than I expected to. Being busy with 2 sports and wanting to manage all of it has been tough, but being at Augie has really helped me figure out time management, learn how to deal with stress and giving full effort because it's something I believe in and something I want to pursue it's my goal to be a physical therapist, and I think Augie and the professors have helped me greatly with that.
Being a student athlete has helped me become a better leader. It's helped me to be more helpful. I mean, in high school, I was, everybody's somewhat the star in high school, and everybody's looking at you. But I mean, when you get to college, you have to work your way up, and it's definitely helped me to go out there and reach out to other people and just be more outgoing, and it's helped me build confidence in myself as a person, just being a student athlete here.
I've become a lot more outgoing. Obviously in college you're kind of on your own, but I guess being with the team, you develop those relationships, but also just I guess appreciating being on the field and everything that we have. So.
Once again, a thank you to all of our NSIC member schools. We're taking next week off due to the holiday weekend. We'll be back December 9th with a brand new Northern Sun Experience.